Our first task in this project will be to design a core data model for our books, then creating a new view to add books to the database. First, the model. Open bookworm.xcdataModelD and add a new entity called book. We'll create one object in there for each book the user has read. In terms of what constitutes a book, I'd like you to add the following attributes. ID as a UUID. This is a guaranteed unique identifier we can use to distinguish between books. Then title, a string, the title of the book. Author, a string, the name of whoever wrote the book. Genre, a string, one of several strings from the genres in our app. Review, another string, a brief overview of what the user thought about the book. And rating, integer 16, the user's rating for the book. Most of those should make sense, but the last one is an odd one. Integer 16. What is a 16? And how come there are also integer 32 and integer 64? Well, just like float and double, the difference is how much data they can store. Integer 16 uses 16 binary digits, or bits, to store numbers. So it can store values from minus 32,768 up to plus 32,767. Whereas integer 32 uses 32 bits to store information. So it holds values from minus 2 billion or so up to plus 2 billion or so. As for integer 64, well, that's a really large number, about 9 quintillion. The point is that these values aren't interchangeable. You can't take the value from a 64-bit number and try to store it in a 16-bit number, because you'd probably lose data. On the other hand, it's a waste of space to use 64-bit integers for values you know will always be small. As a result, core data gives us the option to choose just how much storage we want. Our next step is to write a form that can create new entries. This will combine so many of the skills you've learned so far: form, @state, @environment, text field, picker, sheet, and more, plus all your new core data knowledge. So, start by making a SwiftUI view called addBookView. In terms of properties, we need an environment property to store our managed object context. So we'll say @environment \managed object context var mock. As this form is going to store all the data required to make up a book, we need @state properties for each of the book's values except ID, which we can generate dynamically. So add these properties next. @state private var title equals empty string. @state private var author equals empty string. @state private var rating equals 3. @state private var genre equals empty string. And finally, @state private var review empty string. Finally, we need one more property to store all possible genre options, so we can make a picker using for each. Add this last property to addBookView now. Let genres equals an array of fantasy, horror, kids, mystery, poetry, romance, thriller. We can now take a first pass at the form itself. We'll improve it soon, but this is enough for now. Replace the current body with this. Navigation view, form, section, text field name of book, text $title, text field author's name, text $author, picker, genre, selection $genre, for each genres, ID \self, text $0. Then section, picker rating, selection $rating, for each 0 to 6, text $0. Then text field write a review, text $review. And one more section, button save, add the book, and a title, add book. When it comes to filling in the button's action, we're going to create an instance of the book class using our managed object context. Copy in all the values from our form, converting rating to an int16 to match core data, then save the managed object context. Most of this work is just copying one value into another, with the only vaguely interesting thing being how we convert from an int to an int16 for the rating. Even that is pretty guessable. Int16, some int in parens does it all. Add this code in place of the add the book comment. Let new book equals book context self.mock new book.title equals self.title, and same for author. But for rating, we'll say int16 self.rating, then copy genre, and review. And finally, we'll save the managed object context. That completes the form for now, but we still need a way to show and hide it when books are being added. Showing add book view involves returning to contentview.swift and adding the usual steps for a sheet. First, adding an @state property to track whether the sheet is showing. Second, adding some sort of button, a navigation bar item in this case, to toggle the property. And third, a sheet modifier that shows an add book view when the property becomes true. However, this time there's a small piece of bonus work, and it stems from the way SwiftUI's environment works. You see, when we place an object inside the environment for a view, it becomes available to that view and any views that can call it an ancestor. So if we have view A that contains inside it view B, anything in the environment for view A will also be in the environment for view B. Taking this a step further, if view A happens to be a navigation view, any views that are pushed onto the navigation stack have that navigation view as their ancestor, so they share the same environment. Now think about sheets. Those are full-screen slide-over windows on iOS. Yes, one screen might have caused them to appear, but does that mean the presented view can call the original its ancestor? SwiftUI has an answer, and it's no. Which means that when we present a new view as a sheet, we have to explicitly pass in a managed object context for it to use. As a new add book view will be shown as a sheet from content view, we have to add a managed object context property to content view so it can be passed in. Enough talk, let's start writing some more code. Please start by adding these three properties to content view. @environment \dot managed object context var mock. @fetchRequest entity book.entity sort descriptors empty array var books fetch results book. @state private var showing add screen equals false. That gives us a managed object context we can pass in to add book view, a fetch request reading all the books we have so we can see everything worked, and a boolean that tracks whether the add screen is showing or not. For the content view body, we're going to use a navigation view so we can add a title plus a button in its top right corner. But otherwise it'll just hold some text showing how many items we have in the books array, just so we can be sure everything's working. Remember, this is where we need to add our sheet modifier to show an add book view, passing in the managed object context so we can write its data. You've already seen how we use the @environment property wrapper to read values from the environment, but here we need to write values in the environment. This is done using a modifier of the same name, environment, which takes two parameters, a key to write to and the value you want to send in. For the key, we can just send in the one we've been using all along, \dot managed object context. And for the value, we can pass in our own mock property. We're effectively just forwarding it on. Replace the existing body property of content view with this. Navigation view, text, count, books.count, navigation bar title, bookworm, navigation bar items, trailing, button, action, self.showing add screen.toggle, image, system name plus. .sheet is presented, $showing add screen, add book view, .environment, \dot manage object context, self.mock. Bear with me, we're almost done. We've now designed our core data model, created a form to add data, then updated content view so it can present the form and pass in its managed object context. The final step is to make the form dismiss itself when the user adds a book. We've done this before, so hopefully you know the drill. We need to start by adding another environment property to add book view to track the current presentation mode. @environment \dot presentation mode var presentation mode. Finally, we have to add a call to dismiss to the end of our button's action closure, like this. self.presentationMode.wrapValue.dismiss. You should be able to run the app now and add an example book just fine. When add book view slides away, the count label should update itself to 1. Now there's a warning here. 2 SwiftUI glitches might affect you while following along, depending on which Xcode version you're using. The first is that you might find the plus button really hard to tap, because whereas UIKit extends the area that can be tapped to make it easier to interact with, SwiftUI does not. So you've got to tap exactly on the picture. The second is that you might find tapping the button only works once. This is definitely a SwiftUI bug, because if we toggle the button using an on-tap gesture on the text view, then everything works. It only has a hard time when it's using the navigation bar item. Hopefully, this will get resolved soon, perhaps even by the time you follow this.